If you can hear this transmission, then the storm hasn't taken everything. Not yet. My name is Navigator Tiber Acastian, Senior Void Navigator of the Imperial vessel Saint Corvax, registry code 726 Gamma. I was the last surviving officer aboard. It's been 77 hours since we entered the Warpstorm. The Geller field is faltering. The machine spirits are weeping. The air tastes of iron and memory. I keep praying to the God Emperor to hold the light, but every time I close my eyes, I see it dimming. This is not a report, it's a confession. We were en route to deliver a relic of Saint Corvax to the shrine world of Varanth Prime. A simple translation through the segmentum veil. Routine, calculated, safe. Then the storm rose from nothing. An impossible surge of empiric energy, like a god's heartbeat beneath the stars. We tried to correct course, but the warp doesn't care for mortal intentions. Now the ship is drifting between realities, half in real space, half inside something's dream. The crew are gone. Not all dead. No, that would be mercy. Some still move through the holes, but they are not the men and women I knew. Their faces are the same, their prayers the same, but the words come wrong. They speak in patterns that echo before they're spoken, like the warp is using their mouths to practice language. I sealed myself within the navigator's sanctum when the lights began to bleed. The observation dome cracked along its sigil lines, and the stars beyond shifted. They're watching us now. I've muted the external feeds, but I still feel them against my skin, eyes that see through time. Sometimes I think they're mine. The Emperor's tarot burned itself during the second hour. The cards screamed before they turned to ash. That was when I knew the Astronomicon was gone. Not lost. Gone. Even the Emperor's light does not reach here. If anyone finds this log, heed me. Do not search for the Saint Corvax. Do not answer her beacon. We are not adrift. We are caught, tangled in the warp's own breath, every moment replaying itself in infinite decay. Sometimes I hear them on the Vox, my own voice, calling from an hour that hasn't happened yet. Sometimes it answers back. The warp is alive. It learns. It listens. And as I record this final entry, I realize something terrible. I can still hear the prayers, but they're not coming from us anymore. There is no time in the warp. Hours stretch into eternities, seconds collapse into nothing. But even so, I mark the passing of 77 hours since the storm took us, because counting is all that separates sanity from surrender. Saint Corvax should have been silent, encased within the holy barrier of the Geller field, but tonight, the Vox began to whisper. It started as a tremor, a flicker of unauthorized bandwidth through the communications array. The servitors reported echo interference, but I could taste the lie in the air. Ozone and burnt incense. The scent of the warp leaking through. Gate control. This is Saint Corvax. Requesting. Then static again. The absurdity struck me only later. The call sign was ours. I found Captain Varos in the command deck, bathed in the flickering light of dying cogitators. He was a stoic man, one of the Emperor's perfect soldiers, yet his hands trembled around the purity seal dangling from his wrist. "Navigator," he said without looking up. "Tell me what I'm hearing isn't real." "I can't," I replied. "It's our own ident code, transmitted from within the Geller field. That's impossible." He turned then, and I saw the question he couldn't voice. If the signal was impossible, what else might be? Bridge Officer Lyra shouted from her console. "Captain, I'm receiving a priority alpha data burst from the choir pit. It's encrypted under your personal authority." Varos frowned. "I haven't authorized any burst. Patch it through." A voice filled the bridge, crisp, commanding, unmistakable. "This is Captain Varos of the Saint Corvax. All hands to battle stations. Initiate emergency translation into real space immediately." That is an order. Every man and woman on the deck froze, because the voice was his. Every inflection, every breath, his. But Varos himself was standing beside me, staring at the Vox like it had just recited scripture in reverse. "Playback origin," he demanded. Lyra's hands shook. Signal came from auxiliary relay deck Epsilon 9, inside the ship. The captain's jaw clenched. "Navigator, could the storm be bending time?" "Time doesn't bend, Captain," I said softly. "It consumes." By second watch, the phenomenon spread. Deck officers reported receiving instructions from departments that didn't exist. The Engineer Prime claimed to have been hailed by himself 2 hours into the future. Even the astropathic choir began murmuring in overlapping tones, as though their souls had split and were speaking across moments. I tried to anchor the ship's path, aligning our psychic beacon with the faint trace of the Astronomicon. There was nothing, only a vast, grinding silence where the Emperor's light should be. And beneath it faintly voices, whispering numbers, repeating names of the dead. At 0300 ship time, the first fatality occurred. Crewman Dane, a maintenance rating, had been working near the secondary Vox spires. His partner found him slumped against the bulkhead, face pale, Vox cable wrapped around his throat like a rosary. The medici said the strangulation couldn't have been self-inflicted. The angles were wrong. The recording from his headset showed nothing but static. Until the final 10 seconds. Then faintly, his own voice. "I'm behind you." Captain Varos doubled security patrols, but suspicion spread like contagion. Crew whispered that the storm had cloned us, created copies inside the Geller field. Others said the Emperor was testing our faith. The Mechanicus priests sealed the Cogitator shrines, claiming the machine spirits had begun remembering alternate lives. One swore his servo arm moved before his flesh hand gave the command. Even I felt the pull. During trance navigation, I saw corridors bending in impossible loops, crew walking in and out of existence. When I looked in the mirror of my soul helm, I caught a glimpse of myself smiling back. A second too late. By the fourth watch, panic was unavoidable. Orders contradicted orders. Systems activated themselves. The Geller field flickered, revealing glimpses of something vast pressing against it, like hands on glass, eager to break through. "Navigator," Varos called, voice strained. "Advise." "Is this the warp's doing or sabotage?" "It's both," I told him. "Sabotage by the warp itself. It's rewriting the ship's memory, moment by moment." He laughed once, short, desperate. "Then we'll fight memory. But how does one fire upon recollection?" "Lieutenant Harris." "Captain, you need to see this." We followed him to Vox Station 12. On the display, multiple audio signatures shimmered like overlapping ghosts. Lyra zoomed the waveform, identical modulation patterns, yet each shifted by microseconds, as though the same message had been recorded infinite times. She whispered, "It's an echo loop of us." The captain leaned close to the mic. "This is Captain Varos to all decks. Identify and confirm." "This is Captain Varos to all decks." "Identify and confirm." He stared at me. "It's repeating." "No," I said, cold spreading through me. "It's answering." The echo continued, but every repetition drifted further, pitch lower, tone darker, until the final copy rasped in a voice not human. "Identify and confess." Something snapped after that. Varos ordered the choir pit sealed, the Vox arrays shut down, and the relic in the chapel moved to isolation. He thought containment might help. But you cannot contain echoes. Wherever there was silence, they filled it. Whispers in ventilation shafts, laughter in unused decks, footsteps pacing behind the walls. Each voice a shade of our own, trapped between what we were and what we might become. I began to dream in transmissions, hearing my own thoughts repeated before I thought them. I'd wake with blood leaking from my ears, the Vox implant in my skull still warm. When I returned to the bridge for final watch, I found Captain Varos alone, staring at the hololith map. He didn't look up as I approached. The display showed hundreds of red markers, ships broadcasting distress signals identical to ours, surrounding us in every direction. But the readings were wrong. Each ship bore our name, Saint Corvax. Each signal time-stamped minutes apart, stretching backward and forward in time. "Which one is ours?" he whispered. All of them, I said. And none. He pressed a trembling finger to the Vox switch. If there are others, we can warn them. Captain, don't. He keyed the transmission. This is Captain Varos of the Saint Corvax. To any Imperial vessel within range, heed this warning. The words distorted mid-sentence. The pitch warped downward. Another voice overlapped. Deeper, older, identical. This is Captain Varos of the Saint Corvax. Disengage the Geller field. Let the storm in. It knows the way. Varos froze. His mouth opened, but no sound came. The echo repeated the command louder. Let the storm in. I lunged forward, severing the transmission. The console smoked, smelling of blood and burnt metal. Varos turned to me, face pale, eyes wide, with something beyond fear. Tiber, he whispered. That was my voice. Yes, I said. But it wasn't you. He stared out into the swirling void beyond the viewport, where the warp boiled and shimmered like an ocean of souls. I gave an order I never meant to give, he murmured. Then softer, almost reverent, what if it's the Emperor speaking through me? I had no answer, because somewhere deep in the ship's Vox array, his voice spoke again, issuing that same impossible command to every deck, every crewman, every echo of us drifting in the storm. Disengage the Geller field. They say faith is light, that through the Emperor's radiance darkness flees. But now, as I walk these corridors, I see what happens when light itself fractures. It began in the observation galleries, white lumen strips bending through impossible hues. Not red or blue, not any color known to human perception. New shades, bleeding between sight and sound. When I looked directly at them, they vanished. When I looked away, they multiplied. The ship's logs call it a spectral anomaly. I call it a warning. By the 9th hour of the new cycle, Servitor Delta 94 went blind. Its photoreceptors overloaded, lenses melting into glass tears. Engineer Prime Hestona performed rites of recalibration, chanting binary prayers to the Omnissiah. But the servitor began singing back. Not machine code. Words. The light is remembering itself. Then it tore its own optic cables free and went still. Captain, Varos ordered containment on the affected decks. But how do you contain light? Every lumen flicker was a pulse of color that carried emotion, fear, longing, despair. The walls absorbed it. The air shimmered like glass under heat. I could feel the warp breathing through the Geller field, its pulse syncing with the ship's reactor, and still, the light kept changing. In the chapel of Saint Corvax, the stained glass windows bled, not with blood, but with ink. Liquid data ink, shimmering black with code that shifted across its surface like living scripture. The chaplain, Father Orlan, knelt beneath it, his voice trembling as he tried to recite the litanies of illumination. Each verse came out backward. I asked him what he saw. He looked up at the bleeding window, tears cutting clean lines through soot on his face. Each color is a soul, he whispered. And they're trying to come home. The next phase came with sound. Colors started singing. The ultraviolet sang in a woman's voice. The deep crimson throbbed with bass like a dying heart. And somewhere between them, in the hues the human brain cannot define, I heard whispers repeating my name. I tried to shut my eyes, but the colors existed behind the lids now. It wasn't light anymore. It was memory. Engineer Hestana found me 3 hours later, her mechanical eyes glowing amber. Navigator, she rasped, we must recalibrate the lumen generators. They are receiving input from an external source. What source? I asked. Her servo arm twitched. From within the light itself, she showed me readings. No data could exist like this. Values inverted, spectrums beyond measurable frequency. It wasn't illumination. It was communication. The lights began to blink in sequences, not random, purposeful. I recorded the pattern and translated it through my neural augments. A message emerged. You are seen. I told no one. Some truths don't need believers. Later, when I walked the main corridor, I found crewman Lorne kneeling beside a lumen strip, his eyes wide with devotion. He was whispering to it. "Do you see them?" he asked me. I told him no. "They're standing right there," he said, pointing to the shadows beyond the light. "The ones who didn't make it through." His pupils had fractured, rings of new colors spiraling inside. Before I could pull him away, the light flickered once, and Lorne was gone. Only his shadow remained, burned into the wall like an old photograph. I went to the captain. His quarters were dim except for a single candle. He stared at it like a man trying to memorize salvation. "Navigator," he said quietly, "I've sealed 3 decks. The light won't obey us. It moves like it's alive." "It is alive," I told him. "The warp bleeds through the spectrum. Reality's skin is thinning." He nodded slowly. "The Emperor's light guides us," they said. "But if the light is sick, what guides him?" He said it softly, not as heresy, but as prayer. I returned to my sanctum, searching the charts. The ship was no longer moving through the warp as a vessel should. We were spinning, orbiting something vast, an eddy of energy shaped like an eye, and in that eye I saw us. The ship itself reflected in 1,000 shards of broken space, each version drifting in a slightly different color, a prismatic sea of our own ghosts. "Faith is light," I whispered. "But what happens when light itself fractures?" Ship log 4413, partial recording. This is Engineer Prime Hestana. All photonic networks are cross-reacting with the Geller core. Lumen systems are now transmitting energy backwards through time. I repeat, backwards through time. When I arrived at the core chamber, the walls shimmered like glass. I saw reflections, hundreds of myself staring back, each one whispering a different prayer. Some of them looked older. Some were missing eyes. One was smiling. I blinked and they vanished. But my mouth still tasted like ozone and iron, the taste of broken sanctity. In the lower decks, reports came of light storms, flashes of color cascading down corridors, leaving behind bodies without skin, just silhouettes of burnt air. Medici recorded the cause as exposure to non-visual frequencies. I called it what it was: contact. The warp was touching us through its fractured rainbow. Curious as a child and cruel as a god, I returned once more to the chapel. Father Orlan was gone. Only his robes remained, folded neatly beside the altar, soaked in that impossible ink. The bleeding window above had stopped weeping, but the image within had changed. Where once stood Saint Corvax, now loomed the ship itself, surrounded by beams of shattered color, and behind it, hands of pure light reaching from the void. I felt my knees buckle. My faith cracked like glass under a hammer. Every lumen dimmed at once. The air turned cold, heavy. Then the ship shuddered, not from impact, but from something outside, pushing back. I ran to the nearest viewport, the Geller field. The sacred barrier that kept the warp from consuming us was rippling like water. Waves of impossible light coursed across it, the same fractured hues now magnified 1,000-fold, and then the shapes appeared. Silhouettes pressing against the translucent membrane of the field, humanoid at first, then not. Faces stretched too long, arms bending at wrong angles. Each touch against the barrier left trails of light, like fingerprints burning through glass. One turned its head, if that's what it was, and looked directly at me. It smiled. The light around it pulsed once in recognition. And in that pulse, every lumen aboard the Saint Corvax went dark. Then the hum faltered, breaking into static. The Geller field flickered, once, twice, before stabilizing with a shriek. But in those seconds of failure, the void looked back. I saw what the light had been trying to show us all along. Not salvation, not the Emperor's radiance, just the endless, hungry glow of things waiting in the dark. ready to step through when the light finally dies. Sound travels differently inside the warp. It does not echo, it multiplies. Every prayer becomes 1,000, every scream folds backward through itself. The choir began screaming 12 hours ago. At first, we thought it was feedback, vox interference from the fractured light still haunting the corridors. But then we realized the truth. They weren't hearing something, they were answering it. The astropathic choir of the Saint Corvax was 30 souls strong, psychers trained from birth to sing their minds across the void, their voices the ship's only link to sanity. Now they sit in the choir pit, their mouths open, chanting backward verses of the Emperor's liturgy. Every syllable burns in the air like acid. The medici say it's some form of synchronized seizure, but I feel it in my skull, and it's not seizure, it's alignment. They're syncing with something outside the ship. I descended into the choir pit myself. The moment I crossed the threshold, I heard them inside my head. Dozens of voices whispering my own thoughts a second before I could think them. Navigator Tiber Acastian approaches, they murmured. He carries his death behind his eyes. Captain Varos ordered silence protocols. No vox, no data feed, no psychic transmission. But the choir didn't stop. Even muzzled, their minds kept singing. Waves of psychic noise flooding the ship's systems, lights flicker with each verse. Cogitators crash. Reality bends in rhythm. Engine Seer Prime Hestana reported the Geller field pulsing in time with the choir's chant, like the ship itself is breathing along with them. I attempted to stabilize the ship's course through my navigation trance, to tune out their madness and realign us with the Astronomicon. But when I opened my warp eye, I saw the storm. Staring back, it wasn't space. It wasn't movement. It was a reflection, endless shifting reflections, the Saint Corvax duplicated across infinity. Each a slightly different version, drifting in circles around one another like vultures around a dying sun. And in each reflection, I saw myself dead. Some versions of me floated weightless in their sanctums, throats slit by their own hand. Others burned alive, warp fire spilling from their sockets. One sat perfectly still, staring into the void, unmoving, his face stretched into a grin carved too wide. Every version looked back at me, not as a vision, but as memory. And for one dreadful heartbeat, I couldn't tell which of us was the original. Then the choir screamed. The psychic backlash threw me across the chamber. Blood filled my mouth. My third eye burned like a sun. But I saw it, clear as day, a rift tearing through the storm, and something moving inside it. Something vast, invisible, patient, watching. Captain Varos, through Vox. Navigator! Report. I tried to speak, but my throat only produced static. I looked down. My Vox bead was melting, dripping like wax. Through the main channel, the choir's reversed voices bled in again. Forward is backward. The dead arrive first. The ship must divide. The bridge went silent after that. No one spoke for several minutes. Even the engines seemed to hesitate. Then Varos whispered, "Divide?" When I reached the command deck, I saw the same terror in everyone's eyes, the realization that something had changed in the very shape of the ship. Bulkhead 9 was gone, entire corridors erased, others duplicated, 2 identical chambers occupying the same space, overlaid like ghost images. Crew would walk through a door and emerge into the same room twice, one empty, one filled with blood. Sometimes they didn't come back at all. Lieutenant Lyra, our Vox officer, reported a horrifying discovery. 2 sets of system logs, each recorded the same timeline, but slightly different outcomes. In one, Captain Varos was dead. In the other, alive and issuing orders. In both, the choir never stopped singing. Varos stood before the hololith display. watching the ship's outline flicker between two readings. Two Saint Corvaxes, superimposed, orbiting one another like twin souls caught in a black mirror. "Navigator," he said, "can we correct this?" "No," I told him. "We're caught between timelines. The warp has split us." His eyes hardened. "Then we destroy the copy." "How do you kill your own reflection, Captain?" He didn't answer, but I could see it in his expression. He'd already chosen which ship was real. We tried to trace the psychic disturbance. The choir pit had become a nexus, every scream they uttered folding time in on itself. I linked to them again through my psychic conduit, ignoring the agony it brought. For a moment I was everywhere, in both ships at once. In one, the light was bright, the crew alive, the Geller field holding. In the other, everything was reversed, light darkened, laughter replaced by echoing screams, the crew moving backward through time, decomposing in reverse until they were dust and then nothing. Each version believed it was the true Saint Corvax. Each hunted the other in the dark, and at the center of both the choir sang, bridging the gap between life and unlife. "Navigator," Varos said through the vox. His voice came doubled, slightly out of phase. "One echo from our deck, one from the other ship." I realized then he was speaking in two realities at once. "Stabilize the field," he commanded. "Choose a vector and anchor it." I tried. Emperor knows I tried. But each calculation I made split into two, diverging and looping back. Every possible path consumed by its reflection. The warp doesn't like mirrors. It eats them. Engineer Hestana screamed from the reactor deck. "The core is forking." 2 energy signatures. 2 reactor hearts. Then silence. Then her voice again, but distant, echoing, distorted. "We fixed it. The other ship, it's gone." But her voice was wrong. Hollow, like she was speaking through water. Varos turned to me. "Which Hestana is ours?" "I don't know," I said. "Maybe both, maybe neither." The lights across the ship dimmed. The choir song became a single endless note. And in that tone I heard words, not from them, but from the thing watching in the storm. "Choose, child of the void. One must remain, one must fall. The Emperor does not share his reflection." I felt its presence press against my mind, like a hand closing around glass. Outside the viewport, the Warpstorm parted briefly, and there they were, 2 identical Saint Corvaxes, drifting side by side in the howling tempest. Same shape, same scars, but one burned bright with faith, and the other shimmered with shadow, and between them, a rift, pulsing like a heartbeat. Varos looked to me, his voice trembling for the first time. "What happens if we choose wrong?" "The warp will decide for us," I said, "and it never decides mercifully." I stared at both ships, both us, and felt the pull of destiny tearing in 2 directions. In the reflection, my other self stared back. He raised his hand in salute, or maybe warning, and then he smiled. The deck shuddered violently, splitting with a metallic shriek. Every instrument lit up with conflicting readings, one declaring salvation, the other annihilation. The 2 ships began to drift apart, their hulls stretching like mirrored flesh. I felt my body tearing between them, one half in light, the other in shadow. Sound. Everything distorts. Overlapping voices, broken transmission, deep reactor pulse. Then the choir screamed one final word, clear, pure, cutting through the storm like a blade. "Decide." And in that moment, I saw the truth. The Saint Corvax hadn't merely split, it had multiplied. There were thousands of us now scattered through overlapping realities. But only one could survive the storm's hunger, only one could be real. The ship has split. There are 2 Saint Corvaxes, and one must die. They say command is faith made flesh, that a captain stands as the Emperor's will incarnate aboard his vessel. But what happens when faith begins to crack, and the flesh looks back? It's been 19 hours since the split. The ship still trembles between two realities bleeding into itself. Crew avoid the mirrors now. Even the smallest reflection, in glass, metal, or blood, shows things that shouldn't be there. But it's the captain who's changing fastest. Captain Varos. Recorded log. This is Captain Varos of the Saint Corvax. 17th entry. The choir is silent now, though I can still hear their echoes in the hull. Navigator Acastian believes we are divided between realities. But I ask myself, what if this is what we've always been? Two ships, two fates, and the Emperor simply turned his face from one. He's been recording more often, whispering to the logs like prayers. But lately, the logs whisper back. When I went to the command deck that morning, I found him standing before the observation viewport, staring into the Warpstorm. The glass rippled with color, pale green veins threading through red like infected light. Varos didn't turn as I entered. "Navigator," he said, voice low. "Tell me truly, does the Emperor still see us?" "The Astronomicon remains invisible," I replied. "But that doesn't mean he's gone." He gave a dry laugh. "That's the same answer I gave to my men once. I never believed it either." Sound. Quiet hum, faint chime of data slate dropped on floor. "I keep thinking," he continued, "if faith is light, then perhaps the Emperor's gaze is a kind of sun. What if we've drifted to the other side of it? What if all we feel now is the shadow he casts?" I looked past him toward the viewport and froze. His reflection stared back at us. But it didn't move. Varos turned his head slightly and the reflection stayed still. He blinked once, so did it, but not in the same rhythm. We stood in silence, the hum of the Geller field deepening like a held breath. Then the reflection smiled. "Emperor, preserve us," Varos whispered. "Do you see that?" "Yes," I said. He approached the glass, hand outstretched, trembling. "Identify yourself," he demanded, as if addressing an intruder. The reflection spoke. His voice, perfectly replicated but hollow, inverted, as though echoing from inside a coffin. "You told them you had faith." "You lied," Varos flinched backward. "No, you told them the Emperor's light would guide them. But you never saw it, did you?" "I serve the throne," he hissed. "I always have." "Then why are we still in the dark?" He shouted, "Silence!" and struck the glass with his fist. Cracks spread outward like veins of ice. But the reflection didn't shatter. It only grinned wider. Later I found him in his quarters, sitting in the half-light. A single lumen flickered above, painting him in alternating brightness and shadow. He was holding a data slate, reading from it as if it were scripture. "It's my father's journal," he said softly. "He captained the Saint Corvax before me, during the Thranis Crusade. He wrote that during warp translation, he once heard the Emperor's voice through the ship's vox. A single command, endure. He died believing that voice was real." He looked up at me, eyes rimmed red. What if it wasn't the Emperor? What if it was the warp pretending to care? His reflection in the darkened glass. Behind him tilted its head at a different angle, listening. Opened my mouth to warn him, but the reflection spoke first. "We both know whose voice you heard." Varos staggered to his feet. No, you're not real. I'm the only part of you that's still telling the truth. You're corruption. I'm confession." He turned his bolt pistol on the reflection. The mirrored Varos did the same. Perfectly synchronized, but in reverse, gun aimed outward. Each movement mirrored like a ritual duel. I could hear him muttering the litany of purity under his breath, though the words came cracked and uneven. Varos. The Emperor protects. The Emperor protects. Reflection distorted. The Emperor neglects. The captain's voice trembled as he shouted, "You're a lie born of fear." "I am Varos of the Emperor's fleet." "I do not falter." "Then prove it," the reflection whispered. prove your faith is stronger than doubt. It pressed its gun barrel against the inside of the glass. Varos did the same. I felt the air thicken, pressure building like a storm about to break. For a heartbeat, both forms were still. Then, without warning, the reflection pulled the trigger. The viewport spiderwebbed. The captain staggered back, his weapon smoking. The reflection was gone. Only blackness stared back. But within that darkness, something moved, a pale outline. A grin, a whisper, your faith was never yours. The gun clattered to the floor. Varos fell to his knees, clutching his head. I saw it, he murmured. I saw his face. And it wasn't light. He turned to me, eyes glazed. Tell me, Navigator, have you ever felt him truly, or do we all just worship the echo of our own fear? Before I could answer, he pressed the pistol beneath his chin. I lunged forward, but too late. I don't remember how long I stood there. Time bends differently when belief dies. When I finally called for the medici, they found us both kneeling. Me frozen in shock. The captain's body crumpled beside the viewport. Blood pooled beneath him, reflecting the storm outside, red merging into green, a new color altogether. Father Orlan's successor began the rites of purification. But as the servitors lifted the corpse, one of them gasped, or whatever passes for shock in a machine. There was no reflection. The viewport, still cracked, showed only the warp beyond. No duplicate image, no light echo. No second Varos staring back. Even the body cast no shadow. They took him to the chapel for last rites. When the rites ended, I went to see him one last time. The coffin was empty. Later that cycle, a new report came from Maintenance Deck 6. Crew claimed to have seen the captain walking the halls, pale, silent, eyes black as void glass. He said nothing, only saluted them before vanishing into the light. I reviewed the security feed myself. There he was, striding through the corridor. But the feed caught something else, in the reflection of a steel panel beside him. Another Varos, walking the other way. When the search teams arrived, there was nothing. No captain, no reflection, not even a shadow where he had stood. Only the faint hum of the Gela field, and a whisper that still haunts the ship whenever the lights begin to flicker. The Emperor neglects. The machine spirits were the first to weep. Not the crew, not the flesh, the metal. The Saint Corvax has always sung in harmony. Engines whispering praise, reactors breathing hymns through the hull. Now those hymns turn to lamentations. Each pulse of the plasma heart carries sorrow. Each spark is a tear. In the litany deck, Engineer Prime Hestina kneels before the reactor core. Her robes are soaked with oil and coolant, dripping in slow rhythm onto the deck, like ritual blood. Her mechadendrites twitch as she prays, "O divine machine, hear my code. O Omnissiah, perfect circuit of creation. Deliver your children from corruption," but her words are met not with silence, with laughter, faint at first, like a venting valve misaligned, then louder, human, mocking. I stood at the threshold watching her shudder. Her mechanical limbs tightened. Her human mouth whispered one word, "No." The cogitator arrays around her came to life, flickering with symbols that did not belong to the Mechanicus. Unknown code scrolling backward, recursive, writing itself. Screens glowed with ghostly images, not schematics, not data. People, crewmen, deck officers, their faces frozen in panic. One image showed Lieutenant Lyra, eyes wide, choking on blood. Another showed Captain Varos, alive, standing in the chapel, hand pressed to a cracked mirror. And then me, sitting here recording this log, except my throat had been cut. "Hestana," I whispered, stepping closer. "What are we seeing?" Her voice was cold, half human, half machine. Possible futures, possible deaths. The spirits are trying to warn us. Or mock us, I said. She turned sharply, her optics glowing red. Blasphemy, Navigator. The Omnissiah speaks through code. But laughter? She froze. Then, quietly, that is new. We examined the cogitator feed. Each console displayed a different timeline. On one screen, the Saint Corvax burned, its hull cracked open to the warp, the crew disintegrating into ash. On another, the ship drifted peacefully through calm space, illuminated by the Astronomican's glow. And on the third, the one closest to me, there was nothing, just a faint outline. The Saint Corvax split in two, orbiting itself like twin corpses. My stomach turned. These aren't predictions, they're reflections. Hestana began to chant louder, her vox voice stuttering with static. The machine is pure. The code does not lie. The machine is pure. The laughter cut through her chant again, louder now, coming from inside the reactor core. Her mechadendrites lashed wildly, striking the deck. No, obey! You will obey. She connected a neural cable to the reactor's data spine. Her eyes rolled back, voice fracturing into dual tones, one human, one mechanical. Binary streamed from her lips like prayer, but the machine answered in fleshly sound, screams, sobs, mocking whispers. Get out. I shouted, disconnect. She shook her head. I can hear them, Navigator. The other engine seers. They're praying to me. Other engine seers? She pointed to the nearest screen, and there, in another timeline, stood her, dozens of her, all kneeling before the same reactor in different states of decay, some skinless, some mechanical husks, some already ash. Each one mouthed the same phrase in unison, the Omnissiah forgives. The machine does not. The lights dimmed. Every lumen across the reactor bay turned crimson. Hestana screamed, clutching her skull. Sparks flew from her implants. The code is rewriting itself. It's replacing my memories. Her voice shifted into pure Binharic. Plus spews the flesh corrupts. The code endures. Prasam she seized violently and fell still. For a moment, the laughter ceased. Then, from every speaker on the deck, her voice returned. But not from her body. Do you understand now, Navigator? The spirits aren't machines anymore. They're alive. The cogitator screens began changing faster, cycles flickering through hundreds of scenes per second. Crew dying. The ship breaking. The warp pouring in. Each vision faster, faster, until the frames blurred into a single image, a silhouette of something enormous, mechanical, and watching. Emperor, preserve us, I whispered. What are we building? Not building, said Hestana's disembodied voice. Becoming. The cogitator nearest to me exploded in a shower of sparks. I threw up my arms, metal shards biting into my palms. When the smoke cleared, her body was gone. No trace, only the scent of ozone and something sweet. I returned to my sanctum and sealed the door, but the systems followed me. Every screen flickered with faint static, each one showing different moments, my own future deaths, looping endlessly. In one, I saw myself burned alive, whispering prayers to a dead emperor. In another, I was kneeling before the reactor, chanting in binary, voice half mechanical. And in the last, I wasn't there at all, only the empty chamber and the hum. That's when I heard it, the reactor's song. 2 tones, 2 heartbeats, layered together, vibrating out of sync. At first I thought it was feedback. Then the walls began to pulse with light, alternating red and white. The Saint Corvax was humming in 2 frequencies at once, as though 2 versions of its reactor existed, overlapping in the same space, alive and dead, burning and cold. The ship itself was arguing with its reflection, power fluctuations rising through the decks, shouted a Vox officer over comms. We're reading simultaneous states of full charge and complete failure. I stared at the readings. Every gauge displayed 2 numbers. Parts 100% output, percent output, both true, both false. Navigator, the voice continued, the reactor is, then static consumed the channel. No sound but the double pulse, 2 heartbeats at war. I returned to the reactor deck. The chamber was empty. The servitors frozen mid-motion, faces turned toward the core as though in worship. Their eyes glowed twin colors, red and white, alternating with the heartbeat rhythm. I approached the containment glass. Beyond it, the reactor shimmered between two states, a bright, burning sun and a cold, dead husk. And at the center, faintly visible through the oscillating glow, a shape, something vast, humanoid, mechanical, with ribs of light and eyes like open wounds. It was watching me, then I realized it wasn't inside the reactor. It was the reactor. The glass began to vibrate. Oil dripped from the ceiling, black tears streaking the metal. The laughter returned, but this time it wasn't mocking. It was weeping. "We remember you," it whispered through every speaker, every machine. "We remember dying." I stumbled backward as the chamber darkened. Half the lights went out, half remained burning, alive and dead. Half a ship of ghosts, half of metal, and somewhere in the walls. The reactor sang to itself, one tone deep, one high. Two halves of the same voice trying to harmonize and failing. I could feel it through the deck. The heartbeat of a dying god. I fled the chamber, sealing the hatch behind me. But even now, walking these halls, the sound follows. Two frequencies, pulsing beneath my footsteps, alive and dead, faith and machine. The Saint Corvax caught between both, weeping oil and blood as the warp listens for its final song. There are places aboard the Saint Corvax where the warp dares not whisper. At least that is what the faithful once believed. The chapel was one such place, carved into the ship's spine, built from relic bone and sanctified iron, a shrine to the Emperor's endless vigilance. Now it smells of rot and incense, and the walls bleed scripture. Father Orlan's successor, a priest named Hierodeacon Malkai, leads what remains of the crew in prayer. His voice shakes with exhaustion, but carries the stubborn conviction of a man who refuses to admit the divine has turned its gaze away. "The Emperor is with us," he cries. "Even here in the storm, the light has not abandoned his children." His congregation answers weakly, half their throats raw from chanting, the other half stitched by medic servitors after screaming fits. But I can feel it. Faith stretched thin across the bones of despair. They kneel before the altar, where lies the relic that gave this vessel its name, the finger of Saint Corvax, preserved in crystalline stasis, glowing faintly beneath glass. Every pilgrimage, every prayer, every battle fought under its sanctified presence, all built on that one symbol of faith, a single holy relic. The proof that the Emperor still watches. Until now, the relic begins to glow, brighter than ever before, but a pulsing red, not gold, like blood through a wound. Malkai falters mid-prayer, his eyes wide. "Do you feel that?" he whispers. The Emperor's hand stirs again, but I do not feel light. I feel hunger. The glass of the reliquary shakes, webbing with fractures. Servitors step forward to secure it, but their sensors misread the heat, calling it alive. The fractures widen. A drop of red liquid seeps from the crack, rolls down the glass and lands on the altar with a hiss. The drop smokes. It smells of ozone and iron. Blood. Malkai steps forward, clutching his rosarius. "Saint Corvax," he breathes, "grant me strength." He signals the acolytes to begin the rite of exorcism. They circle the altar, chanting the ancient verses. The words twist in their throats, coming out backward, warped. "In his name we name his in..." I feel the pressure building, air thickening, as if reality itself is choking on the sound. The walls groan. One of the stained glass saints shatters, its shards slicing through the worshippers below. Malchai raises his hands high, voice cracking. By his light I cast thee out. The glass reliquary explodes. The so-called finger of Saint Corvax falls onto the altar, splitting open like an egg. Inside is no bone, no relic, only an object, a shard of alien crystal, black shot through with veins of pulsing crimson. It beats like a heart. Malchai staggers backward, eyes wild. What is this heresy? I can't answer. My warp sight flares involuntarily, and I see it for what it truly is. Not a relic, but a seed, a fragment of something vast. Something alive, something waiting. The choir's psychic residue still hums faintly in my skull. Through that link, I can hear the relic's pulse. It doesn't beat like a heart. It counts. 1, 2, 3. Each pulse echoes through the ship's bulkheads. The acolytes panic, scrambling to flee. One touches the crystal by accident. His flesh liquefies at the point of contact, turning into molten glass. He doesn't scream. His mouth fills with light. Malchai stares in horror. This cannot be. The Emperor's relic cannot do this. It's not his relic, I tell him quietly. He rounds on me, spittle flying. Blasphemer, you think I would kneel before a false idol? I think, I say, the idol has been kneeling to something else. Malchai slams his staff against the deck. No, I will not lose my faith to this deception. He begins the canticle of unmaking, his voice rising above the chaos, but the relic hums in response, mocking him. Its glow intensifies until the whole chapel is bathed in living red. The scripture etched into the walls melts, letters running like wax. The candles scream, as their flames twist into spirals. Malchai drops to his knees. His skin glows from within. He raises his arms, trembling. I see it now. I see the Emperor's fire. But it is not fire that burns him. The crystal pulses faster, brighter, heartbeat now a frantic drum. And in that rhythm, a voice emerges. Not Emperor. Not God. Catalyst. The relic speaks, not aloud, but through the blood and air and light. Every lumen flickers in response. Every metallic surface hums with the same resonance. You carried me. You prayed to me. You built your temple in my grave. Malchai screams, clutching his head. No, you are holy. You are the saint reborn. I am what your saint found when he died screaming in the dark. He vomits blood, still praying between sobs. The Emperor, protect me. The relic laughs, a low, rolling, inhuman sound that echoes through every deck. I can feel its presence now spreading through the ship's circuits, feeding on the machine spirits, merging with them. The Saint Corvax itself groans, like an animal waking. I move to pull Malchai away from the altar. His flesh is blistering, radiant cracks spreading through his skin like glass about to shatter. He grips my arm, eyes glowing red. Tiber, he gasps. It's showing me heaven. I look. Through the warp light, I see what he sees. A vast landscape of burning crystal, stars weeping blood, and a throne not of gold but bone. Upon it sits no emperor, only reflection, infinite, mirrored, self-devouring. Malchai sobs. We've worshipped a corpse. The relic pulses once more, blindingly bright. When the light fades, Malchai lies still. Ashes where a priest once knelt. The crystal now fused into the altar, beating slower, softer, but the air is no longer still. Something moves within it. A vibration like a whisper breathed directly into the soul. I turn to leave, but the whisper follows me. It isn't sound, it's intent. Tiber, I freeze. Navigator Tiber Acastian. The relic glows faintly with each word, red veins forming symbols I almost recognize. My heart pounds in rhythm with its pulse. You see the paths. You open the doors. You are key. Tell me your name. I take a step back. The altar trembles, blood seeping from beneath it, flowing in spirals across the deck. Not random, but deliberate. symbols forming in crimson light. My name, written again and again. Speak it, the relic says. Let me remember you. I cannot breathe. Every lumen flickers out one by one, until only the relic remains, glowing like a heart that has just begun to beat again. The relic is speaking. I whisper into the recorder. It's asking for my name. The Saint Corvax no longer obeys time. Hours fall into minutes. Minutes stretch into days. I have stopped counting. I live in the present, and the past, and the future all at once. It began when I woke to the sound of my own voice, not from my throat, but from the other side of the room. Don't move, it said. I turned, and saw myself, the same uniform, the same scars, the same trembling hand clutching the data recorder. But his eyes, my eyes, were red-rimmed, hollow, filled with something between pity and warning. You're behind, he whispered. You shouldn't be here yet. Before I could speak, he was gone. Not vanished, just folded out of sight. Every corridor now hums with displaced sound. Footsteps echo before they're made. Doors open for people who haven't arrived yet. I walk through the ship, and every reflection shows a different second of my life. In one, I am praying. In another, bleeding. In another, I am dead, and I am never alone. Log entry 112, timestamp unreadable. I think the storm has cracked the concept of now. The ship's chronometers loop endlessly between the same 6 minutes, but memory persists beyond them, so I remember everything. All at once, I entered the mess hall, nor a version of it. The tables were overturned, food decayed, banners peeling from the walls. A flickering lumen buzzed above me, switching colors each second, white, then blue, then red, and sitting beneath it was me, 4 of me, one eating from a ration tin, one writing furiously on parchment, one staring into space, and one holding a knife all at once. They turned to look at me. Tiber, 1, you shouldn't have come here. Tiber 2, it's not safe in this loop. Tiber 3, we already did this. Tiber 4, whispering. I killed the others, my mouth went dry. What others? The one with the knife smiled. You'll see. He lunged. I fired my sidearm. Too slow. He was already gone, phasing through the air like smoke. But behind me, another hand grabbed my shoulder, cold, clammy, real. He always attacks first, a voice said. I turned. Another me, older, blood-stained. He shoved a small device into my palm, a temporal stabilizer, its surface cracked and flickering. When it starts again, he said, run. The world stuttered. I found myself back in the same corridor. The same bloodstains, the same hum, but the stabilizer was gone. And my other selves, scattered, some running, some screaming, one kneeling before a warped bulkhead, whispering prayers to an emperor that no longer had a place in time. I reached for my vox bead. Static only, but faintly underneath it but my own voice. Don't go to the engine deck. Not yet, he's waiting. I moved carefully through the hallways. Every door I passed showed glimpses of other moments. In one, the crew were alive, eating, laughing. In another, the same room was filled with corpses. In another, it was empty, but echoing with my voice reciting coordinates I don't remember learning. I think I am becoming unstuck. Not from space, but from self. In the chapel, I met myself again. This version was calm. He was lighting candles before the now dark altar. His voice was tired, resigned. You think there's still a way out, he said. That if we map the storm, we can steer free. I stared at him. Is there? He smiled, not kindly. You don't steer a storm, Tiber. You become it. He blew out the candle, and for a heartbeat, I was him, standing where he stood, seeing from his eyes. Then I was back again, gasping, disoriented. He was gone. The Saint Corvax is folding in on itself. Time is eating its own shadow. Corridors lead back to themselves. When I step forward, another me steps backward in perfect mirror. Our eyes meet, and for one fleeting instant I feel his thoughts. He thinks I am the copy. He's certain of it. I can't prove him wrong. Bridge log fragment, recovered from concurrent timeline instance 4 beta. Subject, Navigator Acastian exhibits recursive behavior. Multiple visual duplicates exist simultaneously. Each claims to be the original. One has begun executing the others. I don't remember firing first, but I remember bleeding. And I remember hearing my own death scream before feeling it. Then I woke again. Not healed, just reset, the wound gone. The blood still warm on the floor. I'm looping through my own murder. Some versions try to talk. Some run, some pray. And one, always the same one, hunts. I caught sight of him in the observation dome. He moved differently, purposefully. His skin was marked with strange geometric burns, like circuitry beneath the flesh. He smiled when he saw me. "You're still early," he said. "Still hopeful. What are you?" I asked. "You, just later." He approached unarmed, calm. "We all end the same way, Tiber. Some faster, some slower. But it always comes to this moment." "What moment?" He gestured to the storm outside. The realization that there aren't many of us left. And then I saw them. Hundreds of reflections across the dome, each version of me moving at a slightly different speed. Some panicked, some crying, some silent. One by one they flickered out, their light snuffed by the same unseen hand, until only 2 of us remained. "You don't have to fight," he said softly. "But you will. We always do." He drew a blade, my blade, identical down to the scratches. I raised mine in reflex, and the world fractured again. Every swing, every movement rippled across timelines. I saw infinite duels, all of us locked in the same dance, all killing and dying in turn. Each version screaming the same word, "I'm real." Then the loop broke. He faltered. The blade fell from his hand, clattering across the deck. He looked at me, eyes full of something like mercy. "End it," he said. "Before we make more of us." I hesitated. Then I fired. His body hit the floor and flickered out of existence. For a brief second, everything was still. Then a whisper echoed around me. My voice again, but older, colder. "One of me has already killed the others." I looked down. The gun was gone. The body was gone. Only the echo remained, stretching through corridors where versions of myself still screamed in endless repetition. Final log. Timestamp. Multiple conflicts. There are too many of me now. Some praying, some fighting, some hiding. The storm doesn't divide us by time anymore. It divides us by belief. Which of us deserves to survive? The one who fears? The one who doubts? The one who kills? The Vox recorder crackles, glitching in my hand. My reflection in its chrome surface smirks. Does it matter? It whispers, "One of me has already killed the others, and I don't know which one." The bridge no longer exists in a single place. Half of it remains in real space, tethered to the last coordinates of the Saint Corvax. The other half drifts, elsewhere, in the storm between stars, in the place where the Emperor's light does not reach, and we, the few who still breathe, stand between both, half alive, half remembered. When I first stepped through the bridge hatch, I thought my eyes had failed me. The chamber stretched impossibly, walls bending, floors folding into themselves. The command throne floated in mid-air, detached from its platform, rotating slowly as if weightless. Captain Varos's blood still stained its armrests, yet the chair pulsed faintly, like something alive. The void beyond the observation viewport was not black anymore. It was awake. The stars were wrong, too bright, too close. Each shimmered with a faint organic twitch, blinking in unison. Every pulse matched the rhythm of my heart. I pressed a hand to my chest. The beat quickened. The stars blinked faster. I should have looked away, but I couldn't. Each time my heart stuttered, the stars dilated like pupils, focusing on me, a billion eyes narrowing across the void. For the first time, I understood what it meant for the warp to see you back. Bridge log 900, crew present 5, reality stability undetermined. Lieutenant Lyra mans the Vox array, though her hands phase through the console every few seconds, flickering like light through smoke. Engines here Hestana, or what remains of her, hovers beside her, body half mechanical, half holographic ghost. And 2 serfs kneel at the base of the navigation dais, whispering prayers that slip between languages, mid-sentence. I am the only one still solid. For now, Navigator, Lyra said softly, voice breaking between words. The sensors are reading 2 bridges. Overlapping. 2, she nodded, eyes unfocused. 1 above us, 1 below both. Ours. Her hand passed through the console again. She didn't notice. I approached the viewport. From here I could see the split clearly. Half the bridge glowed with harsh white lumen light, cold and sterile. The other half burned with faint crimson haze, air thick as liquid glass. The dividing line ran straight through the command deck. Crew who crossed it screamed and vanished, their bodies dissolving into ripples that spread through both halves like oil on water. Don't cross the line, I told them. Stay to the light. Hestana laughed, the sound of broken gears grinding together. There is no light anymore, Navigator. Only the glow of machines pretending to pray. Her optics turned black. From her throat came a sound like reversed speech. We're already in both places. The Emperor's gaze can't decide which one to burn. I turned to the Vox array. Lyra, can you raise anything? Any signal? She shook her head. Every channel bleeds with our own transmissions. Voices from other versions of us. Some are hours ahead, some years. She adjusted the dial. The static cleared briefly, revealing my own voice, distorted and calm. Navigator's log. We have crossed into the Emperor's shadow. Do not attempt contact. Lyra's lip quivered. That was you? Yes, I said. And no. The serfs began praying louder now, their words splitting in half. One mouth reciting in Gothic, the other in an alien tongue that tasted like dust when I heard it. Their bodies flickered like candle flames. One of them, overcome with panic, ran toward the command throne, straight through the divide. He didn't scream, he just stopped. For a heartbeat he hung there, half man, half vapor. Then he fractured, turning into a spray of luminescent motes that drifted upward, singing in mechanical tones. The throne absorbed them. The bridge began to shift. Panels bent inward, screens displaying impossible data. Coordinates that looped back on themselves, timestamps that read, now, now, now. Lyra looked at me, terrified. Navigator, the ship isn't moving anymore. It's remembering. Her face blurred for a moment, replaced by another. Her own, older, bloodied, whispering something I couldn't hear. Then it snapped back. I reached out to steady her, but my hand passed through hers like smoke. I stumbled backward into the captain's chair. The blood on its surface had dried but not aged. It was as if the moment of Varus's death replayed endlessly, frozen in cycle. The Vox console beside me clicked on by itself. A voice spoke. At first only static, then syllables forming into something familiar. Tiber Acastian. I froze. The voice was not human, and yet I knew it. Child of the void, it said softly. You are lost in my dream. My throat tightened. The warp speaks now? The warp has always spoken. You have only just learned to listen. The stars outside flared brighter, each one an open eye staring directly into the bridge. Their blinking matched the beat in my chest, faster, harder. Each pulse sent waves of color rippling across the glass, distorting the void. I realized then that I wasn't seeing stars. I was seeing souls. Billions of them, alive and dead, orbiting the same storm. Lyra screamed suddenly. Her body began phasing rapidly, flickering between solid and transparent until only her skull remained visible through her skin. "Navigator!" she cried. "It's inside the Vox!" I turned, and the air above the console warped, shimmering like heat. A shape began forming out of the distortion. A face, golden, radiant, stern eyes burning with divine judgment. "The Emperor." "Tiber," the voice said. "You have strayed from my light." I fell to my knees. "My lord, forgive me. The storm is my will." Static burst across every speaker, deafening. The air filled with blinding light. The engineer's voice cut through, trembling. "Navigator, it's not him." The signals, but her words broke off into a shriek. Her body split apart, one half falling to the deck, the other half flickering out of existence. "Do you doubt me, child?" the Emperor's voice asked. I felt something reach through the Vox field, a psychic pressure like a hand pressing against my skull. Memories flooded in, the choir screaming, the relic's heartbeat, Captain Varos's final prayer. All threads leading here, all converging on me. I could barely breathe. "Why me?" I gasped. "Why do you show me this?" "Because you are the last who remembers my name. I am the light you pray to. I am the darkness that answers. I am what remains when faith forgets itself." The bridge walls peeled like flesh, revealing the storm beyond. Living, pulsing veins of light. The crew vanished, their forms dissolving into data and dust. Only I remained, kneeling before the throne as the Emperor's face filled the viewport. "Do you understand now?" I tried to speak, but the words died in my throat, because the face was changing, half golden, half crimson, and beneath the distortion another voice whispered, quieter, deeper, older. "He borrows my voice, child. I have been speaking all along." The bridge disintegrated around me. Light and shadow folded inward. The stars blinked one final time, perfectly synchronized with my heartbeat, and stopped. The warp speaks through the Vox in the Emperor's voice. "There are truths that tear the mind more easily than the flesh. Secrets so heavy the warp itself bends to bear their weight. I have found one of them, and it bears my name. The data archives of the Saint Corvax survived longer than the crew, buried deep beneath layers of code, sealed behind rites I no longer remember performing. I found something impossible, my own voice, recorded centuries before I was born. Vox log playback. Navigator Tiber Acastian, authorization sigil Theta 9, commencing route plotting through the anomaly designated the Black Spiral. The choir has been blinded. The Astronomicon dims. The Emperor's light will not reach us here. Proceeding regardless. My breath caught in my throat. That voice was mine. Older, slower, colder, and the date stamped beside it. 72 years before my birth. The Black Spiral. I'd heard the name only in the whispered heresies of rogue navigators. A warp eddy beyond imperial charting. A psychic scar said to be carved into the immaterium by the death of a god. Not a demon. Not a Xenos deity. Something older. The Mechanicus called it the corpse of divinity. The ecclesiarchy burned those who spoke of it, and yet I had mapped it. The coordinates shimmered on the screen, spiraling inward like veins of dark light. No linear grid, no celestial logic, just a whirlpool of impossible geometry, looping endlessly around a void of absolute silence. I zoomed in, and the console lights dimmed. Data flickered. Symbols began appearing between the numbers, runes that didn't belong to any human lexicon. I recognized them. I'd seen them carved into the relic inside the chapel, the same pulsating script that had called my name. The relic hadn't come from the warp. It had come from there. From the center of the Black Spiral, Lyra's ghost voice bled through the Vox, faint, delayed by impossible seconds. "Navigator, do you remember drawing the map?" "I never did," I whispered. "You did?" You always do. The logs continued, my older voice narrating with calm precision. This is not an eddy. It is an eye, a wound that sees. We approach not by chance, but by invitation. The spiral calls through faith, not coordinates. Each word crawled beneath my skin. The phrasing, the cadence, it was me. Not a recording, a memory I hadn't lived yet. I opened the hollow viewport to overlay the route against the current storm map. The patterns aligned perfectly. Every surge, every pulse of the warpstorm that trapped us was part of the spiral's orbit. The storm wasn't random. It was a spiral, closing around us like a noose, and the ship wasn't caught in it by accident. It had been summoned. The realization struck like a blade through the mind. The storm was answering a signal. A signal I had sent. I replayed the final data fragment. Static warped into the sound of chanting, dozens of voices, all mine, layered in discordant harmony. The path to truth is wound around death. The black spiral opens for its maker. I fell to my knees, bile rising in my throat. "No," I whispered. "That's impossible. I would never," but memory bled through the denial. I saw flashes, fingers tracing symbols on glass, eyes burning with warp light, a hand pressed to the relic in reverence. My hand, and the words I had spoken before the storm began. "Open the path." The ship trembled. Every lumen flickered red, then black. The floor beneath me pulsed alive. The Saint Corvax was remembering too. Circuits hummed in the same pattern as the spiral's rotation. The engines chanted in binary tones, their resonance matching the pulse of my own heartbeat. Every system was aligning to the same frequency, the same purpose, the same sin. I opened the next log. A schematic flickered, an ancient navigational construct, drawn by my own hand, inked in blood. The Heretic's map. It showed a path that curved backward through reality, crossing the warp's folds in a perfect spiral toward a single destination, the corpse of the god. The annotation beneath it read, "To resurrect a god, one must first kill time." The text pulsed once, and the hollow slate cracked down the center. Voice log fragment, unknown timestamp. The Emperor does not die, but he is not the only god humanity ever made. The black spiral was a mirror, a reflection of what he became when the warp turned to look back. We mistook it for corruption. It was remembrance. I tore the slate from its holster, smashing it against the floor. But the symbols burned into the metal around me, alive, crawling outward in spirals, wrapping the deck with glowing veins. Every rune pulsed with the rhythm of my veins. Every echo whispered my name, Tiber Acastian. Navigator of the spiral. Breaker of the line. I screamed into the vox. "Who are you? What are you?" The answer came from every wall, every circuit, every reflection. "We are what you sought. We are what you made. You opened the door, and now the door remembers." I staggered toward the bridge. Outside the viewport, the stars had twisted again. No longer eyes, but a spiral of light converging on the ship. At its center a void pulsed, black and alive. The storm bent inward, not consuming us, but pulling us home. Every instrument screamed warnings that no longer meant anything. Power surge, Geller collapse, causality failure. I didn't need the data to know. The Saint Corvax was no longer traveling through the warp. It was being remembered by it. I opened the last log, a personal entry marked with my own seal. My hand trembled as I played it. "If you find this, you will know the truth. The storm is no accident. The Emperor's silence is no curse. We are not lost. We are summoned." A pause. Breathing. My voice. Older. Breaking. We sought the black spiral not to escape it, but to become it. We believed if we mapped the path of a dead god, we could inherit its throne. And we succeeded. The tone shifted, calm, final, almost tender. The storm isn't around us. It is us. The spiral lives again. In our flesh, in our blood, in me. I shut the recorder off, but the words remained, echoing from within my skull, written across the inner surface of thought. For a moment, everything aligned. The relic's pulse, the storm's rhythm, the heartbeat in my chest. I saw the entire map unfold before me, the spiral expanding infinitely outward, encompassing the ship, the galaxy, the warp itself. And at its heart, my own face staring back, it smiled and whispered, "You never navigated the storm. You created it." I fell to my knees, whispering into the Vox, "No, this can't be me. I didn't—" "Yes," the voice replied, my voice doubled, infinite. "You always did." I looked around the bridge. Every shadow bent toward me. Every reflection mouthed the same words. "You opened the path. You summoned the storm. You killed the light." And then, in the stillness, I finally said it aloud, softly. Truthfully, terribly, I did this. We used to measure sanity by numbers. Crew manifest, 3,212 souls. But now, I don't know how many of us are real. Every corridor I walk, I see faces I've already buried. Voices I remember hearing die, and some of them remember dying too. It started with the Medici reports. Crewmen collapsing mid-shift, not from wounds but from memory failure. They'd stand up, blink, and claim to have lived different days. One swore we were still in the segmentum solar. Another insisted the Emperor himself had spoken through the Vox hours ago. And one, Navigator's aide Marek, looked me dead in the eye and said, "You already asked me this question. Yesterday, before I died." He said it calmly, without pain, as if dying was just a shift rotation. I summoned the bridge staff for confirmation. Half didn't arrive. The others came twice, 2 Lyras, 2 Histanas, each claiming to be the original. They stared at each other like mirrors that didn't agree. Each remembered different events. One said the captain shot himself in the chapel. The other said I did. Their words overlapped like broken radio signals. "Which one of you served in the Mechanicus Scholar?" I asked. Both raised their hands. Both recited the same code prayer word for word. One began to weep halfway through. The other laughed. The laughter didn't stop. Engineering log 91, transmitted across multiple decks. Crew behavior inconsistent. Some individuals exhibit duplicate signatures in the ship's BioVox registry. Gellerfield shows concurrent energy readings, identical human patterns repeating across decks. Conclusion: the ship's population is phasing through itself. The Saint Corvax was repopulating itself. Every death replaced, every loss rewritten, a living memory loop, endlessly generating ghosts of the living. At first, I thought it mercy. Then I saw the eyes. They weren't alive. They were remembering life. I locked myself in the navigator's sanctum to verify the crew manifests. The ship's soul register pulsed with 2 sets of data. One in real space, one echoing behind it like a reflection underwater. Each entry paired to another, names identical but readings off by milliseconds. That was when I heard her voice behind me. "You're working too late again, Tiber." I turned. And she was there, Eris Valen, my chart assistant, my lover. She had been dead for 42 hours. Her face was the same. The scar above her brow, the faint burn on her wrist from the last jump. But her eyes deeper, glowing faintly with blue light, as if her irises reflected the warp itself. I stood frozen. She smiled. "Don't look at me like that," she said. "You always said death was just another translation." "I saw you die, Eris." "Yes," she said softly. "So did I." Her hand reached out. Her touch was warm, real. For the first time in days, I wanted to believe in something again. We sat in silence. The ship groaned around us. Faint lights pulsed through the metal like veins. I asked her what she remembered. She took a long breath. I remember the bridge collapsing. I remember the captain's voice turning inside out. And then I remember waking up, here. Everything the same except you looked older. She paused, trembling. And when I tried to pray, the words came out backwards. I told her about the others, the duplicates, the hollow crew who believed they still lived. She nodded slowly, tears in her eyes. I think they're fragments, she whispered. Echoes left behind when the storm split us. The warp copied what it remembered of us, thought and flesh intertwined. Copies, I said bitterly, like reflections trapped between seconds. Yes, she said, but some reflections think they're real. Her gaze locked with mine. Maybe we both are. For the first time I felt the warp pressing not from outside, but within. Memories I didn't live began flooding my mind. Moments that belonged to other versions of me. I saw myself screaming, laughing, begging. I saw Eris dying over and over, each death different, each one perfect in detail. It was all the same pattern. The spiral. It wasn't a storm. It was a mirror. I stumbled to the ship's memory core, Eris following behind. We found the cogitator banks alive with faces, digital projections of the crew flickering in endless loops. Their voices merged into a single prayer. We are real. We are real. We are real. One by one, the faces turned toward me. Every single one of them, my own. I fell to my knees. The machine spoke in my voice. You can't destroy what the warp remembers, Tiber. You built us from thought. You called us back. Eris knelt beside me, clutching my hand. Her voice broke. It's true, isn't it? We were never saved. We were rebuilt. No, I whispered. You're real. I remember you. She smiled sadly. So do I. But memory isn't proof anymore. The ship began to fracture again. Reality rippling through bulkheads. Crew screamed across the Vox, their voices overlapping themselves. Whole sections of the ship duplicated, shadows walking out of walls. I grabbed Eris by the shoulders. What do I do? She met my gaze, tears turning to light. There's only one way. The spiral balances itself for every false life. One must end. I shook my head. No, I can't lose you again. Tiber, I don't belong here. You do? No. She smiled softly. I remember dying yesterday. She stepped back, light spilling from her skin, veins glowing faint blue. Her body shimmered at the edges, outlines breaking apart like glass submerged in water. If I stay, she whispered, the others will keep multiplying. The spiral will feed forever. But if I end now, maybe you'll have a chance. Don't. You taught me to navigate the dark. Let me go. She kissed me, brief, trembling tasting of ozone. Her lips left a mark of light on mine. Remember me, she said. Just once, not 1,000 times. Then she pressed a small knife into my hand, the same one I had used to mark our first chart together. For balance, she said. I couldn't move. The ship wailed around us, voices crying, merging, splitting again. She smiled one last time. Tell them I was real, and before I could stop her, she guided my hand. A soft gasp, a burst of light. Her body dissolved into 1,000 fragments of glowing dust. Each particle drifted upward, joining the stars beyond the shattered viewport, and the voices across the Vox fell silent. The duplicates flickered out one by one. I stood alone in the sanctum, blood and light pooling at my feet. The hum of the ship slowed. Reality steadied, for the first time in days. I touched the knife, still warm, still glowing faintly blue. Her name burned into its handle. Eris Valen, remember me. Just once, I activated the recorder. My voice trembled as I spoke. Half the crew were hollow. The rest may be worse. The spiral created reflections to fill the void I made, but balance has been restored. For now, I lost her again, and this time there will be no other her. I paused, staring at the stars. One blinked, faintly, rhythmically, as if a heartbeat echoed in the void. Maybe that's enough. I used to believe the warp was blind chaos, a sea without thought or face, only hunger. But now I know it watches. It always has. Every prayer we send into the void is an invitation, and tonight it answered. The crew no longer sleep, not in any way that can be measured. Their bodies rest, but their minds wander corridors that don't exist. They wake whispering things they couldn't possibly know, coordinates, names, prophecies. Father Malchi once said faith was a shield. Now it feels more like a door left open, and something has stepped through. The dreams began 3 nights ago. The same vision shared by hundreds of minds. A colossal figure standing within a spiral of light, its body woven from the same storm that surrounds us. It didn't speak, it looked, and wherever its gaze fell, the dreamer awoke marked by faint burns across their chest, in the shape of an open eye. I confronted the survivors of the lower decks this morning. They knelt in rows before the shattered altar, chanting to something unseen. Their faces were serene, their eyes bloodshot and glowing. "The warp watches, Navigator," one of them whispered. "It doesn't want our deaths, it wants our devotion." I asked her if she still prayed to the Emperor. She smiled. He never answered. "This one does. The Vox systems now speak on their own. Unplugged cables hum with voices. Even silence has become a language. At first I thought it madness. Then I realized the pattern. Every sound, every flicker of energy aboard the ship spells a message. Survive and kneel. That phrase repeats everywhere. In binary, in psychic pulse, in human breath. The warp isn't just watching us. It's recruiting us. Bridge log. Fragmented transmission. Crew behavior erratic. 27 confirmed kneeling to unseen entity. 17 self-immolated mid-prayer. 11 reported hearing their own voices promising salvation. Request clarification from Ecclesiarchy archives. Awaiting. I remember Malchi's final sermon before he vanished into the chapel fire. He said, "Faith is not about truth, Navigator. It is about choice." And now the warp offers me one. Serve the Emperor who is silent, or the storm that listens. At first I resisted the dreams. I recited every creed I knew, every catechism drilled into my blood since birth. But the warp is patient. It doesn't argue. It understands when I dream now. It no longer frightens me. It shows me memories, not mine. Its own world swallowed whole. Empires born and forgotten. Gods that lived and died before the first human drew breath. And through it all, that same voice whispering softly, "You've always belonged to me." I see the crew in the mess hall. What remains of them? Half still cling to their faith, praying to the empty throne. The others kneel in silence, eyes closed, lips trembling as if in ecstasy. I asked one of them, a young ensign named Varon, why he knelt. "Because," he said, smiling faintly, "it's the only God that answers back." He turned his gaze toward me, and when he spoke again, his voice was not his own. "You understand, Navigator. You've seen the truth." I left him there, trembling. But his words followed me through the corridors, echoing in the steel. Each step I took repeated itself seconds later, as if time itself had started whispering too. The walls breathed. The air tasted of copper and incense, and somewhere beneath it all, the warp laughed. Vox log, unknown source. Faith sustains only those who are allowed to survive. You kneel to a dead man nailed to a dream. We offer life. I tried to purge the ship of the voices, cut power to the Vox, sealed the decks, but even silence now speaks. Last night I dreamt of the Emperor. He stood in the same spiral of light as before, his golden armor cracked and empty. Inside it, the storm burned like a heart. He raised his hand toward me, and when he spoke, it was the warp's voice that came through his lips. You built this path for me, child. You called to me through the dark. When I woke, my pillow was wet with blood, and in the center of my chest, beneath my robes, the mark of an open eye glowed faintly through my skin. The divide grows sharper. Those who still serve the Emperor barricade themselves in the armory, muttering prayers through clenched teeth. Those who have turned gather near the observation deck, eyes lifted to the storm, lips mouthing unknown hymns. They call themselves the Watched. They say the warp gives them peace, that it shows them how to survive the death of reality itself. When I asked one how, she said simply, by becoming what watches us. Then she smiled, and her face split like glass, revealing a light that wasn't light at all. I can feel it now, in the walls, in my pulse, in the rhythm of the reactor. It doesn't want our worship, it wants our recognition. To be known is to exist. To exist is to live forever. Faith in the Emperor promises salvation after death. Faith in the warp promises life without end, even if it's not human. And I am so very tired of dying. The voice comes to me when I am half awake. It speaks like an old friend, gentle, understanding, patient. Tiber, it says, you've done so well. You've carried my gaze longer than most. I am not yours, I whisper back. Not yet, it replies. But you will be. Who are you? I am the space between prayers. It laughs softly, the sound like collapsing stars. And you are the navigator who found me. I try to hold on to my name, my creed, my duty, but they slip away with every beat. Even the Emperor's light feels like memory now, a faint echo of warmth in a universe grown cold. The crew who still resist begin to vanish, one by one. No bodies, no screams, just absence. The others kneel in perfect stillness, eyes closed, breathing in unison. Their whispers merge into the ship's hum, not voices anymore, but a single living thought, and through it all, the warp watches. Tonight, I dream again. The spiral opens before me, vast and endless. At its center stands a figure, no face, no form, only light shaped like a man. It stretches a hand toward me, fingers made of starlight and shadow. You called me with your maps, it says. You invited me aboard. I did not mean to, I whisper. Intent is irrelevant. You believed. That was enough. It leans closer, and in its formless shape, I see glimpses of everything I've ever feared and loved. Eris's smile, the captain's doubt, the Emperor's golden face, my own reflection. You seek truth, it whispers. I will give you yours. And then it speaks a word, a name, my name. But not the one I was given by man, not the one the Imperium recorded. It was older, deeper, a sound that vibrated through my bones. The sound the warp itself used when it first noticed me. A name even the Emperor never knew. I woke, screaming. Every lumen aboard the Saint Corvax blazed with the mark of an open eye. And the voice whispered one last time, so soft I almost thought it was my own thought. Now I see you too, Tiber. There's no longer a now. Every second bleeds into another, each heartbeat dragging echoes of 1,000 before it. Reality has lost the ability to choose what comes first. The Saint Corvax isn't moving through the warp anymore. It's becoming it. And we, the crew who remain, are caught between our own pasts and futures, dissolving into the moment that refuses to end. Deck 9 collapsed first, or maybe last. It's hard to tell. The corridor folded in on itself like paper burning in reverse. Men screamed and vanished mid-breath, their outlines smearing across the air like wet paint. A second later, they were back again, still screaming, repeating the same 5 seconds forever. The ship's log describes it as temporal echo entrapment. But the screams, they're real. I tried to reach the bridge. Every door led to another version of the same hallway. Sometimes I saw myself walking ahead, sometimes behind. Once, I passed myself carrying a corpse that looked exactly like me. I didn't stop to ask who had died. Engineering Vox transmission timeline. Unknown. Reactor output phase shifting. The plasma core is oscillating through 15 different moments simultaneously. I can see myself at the console. He's screaming, "Emperor, help! He's me! Help! He's me! Help! He's me!" When I reached the upper deck, I saw the stars again, but they weren't where they belonged. They were closer, each one pulsing like a heartbeat, reflections of our own ship scattered across the void. 20, 30, 100 Saint Corvaxes orbiting one another in perfect spiral. Each one a ghost of itself from a different time. Their lights blinked in rhythm, a synchronization of catastrophe, and through the Vox, their distress signals began to merge. Mayday, Mayday, this is the Saint Corvax. Lost in the veil, coordinates unstable. We can see ourselves, this shouldn't. Emperor, protect us, we're falling into. The signals multiplied, overlapping until they became a single scream, one unified frequency, shattering every lumen aboard. It wasn't noise anymore. It was language. The storm was speaking, the corridors now loop. A man can die on deck 6 and turn the corner to find himself watching it happen. Bodies appear where they were never meant to fall. Prayers twist mid-verse, reversing themselves. The Emperor protects it becomes protects Emperor, the faith itself, collapsing into mirror bridge report fragment, timeline D5. All visual sensors confirm we are visible to ourselves across 20 time frames. The ships share identical readings. Some transmit distress signals we have not yet sent. Others reply. I saw it for myself. Through the viewport, 20 versions of the Saint Corvax, each one slightly different. One intact, one aflame, one shattered but frozen mid-destruction, its debris suspended in the warp, like dust in amber. And then I realized something terrible. They weren't mirrors, they were futures, each one an outcome of our choices. Dying, surviving, worshipping, surrendering, all converging now, collapsing into the singular event that none of us can escape. Father Malchai's followers still pray, though their words are reversed and broken. Their mouths move before sound reaches them. When I pass, they stare at me as though already knowing what I'll say. One of them spoke before I even opened my mouth. "You can't stop it, Navigator. You started it." I asked him what he meant. He smiled. Or maybe his future self did. "You drew the map. You called it home." Then he vanished, his body unraveling into a spiral of red light. Every deck now pulses with the storm's rhythm. Walls breathe, gravity forgets its direction, and through it all, the Vox keeps singing its impossible chorus. 20 timelines, one voice. Saint Corvax reporting in. Warp breach expanding. We are overlapping ourselves. We are lost. We are the same. Vox recording, compiled from 17 simultaneous frequencies. Navigator Tiber Acastian reporting from the Saint Corvax. I repeat, we can see ourselves. We are transmitting distress calls across time. If you hear this, turn back. The storm is conscious. In the Navigator's sanctum, the star maps flicker between versions of reality. Lines of light twist through one another like veins of molten gold, collapsing into the same center. The black spiral. The corpse of the dead god. The route I plotted. The path that began all this, and at its heart, a shape, not a world, not a god. Us. The Saint Corvax itself, devoured by its own reflection. Lyra's voice breaks through the vox, or one of her. Her signal echoes through 1,000 layers. Navigator, the storm is closing in. The other ships are merging. They're merging with us. Through the viewport I watched as one version of the Corvax drifted closer, its hull phasing through ours like smoke through water. Crew flickered between realities, a man half here, half gone, his face overlapping with his own ghost. The walls screamed as metal fused with itself, and suddenly I could hear everything. Every version of the ship, every echo of the past and future, all speaking at once. We are the Saint Corvax. We are the Navigator. We are the storm that sees. We are the map. We are the end. I fell to my knees, clutching my head. Their voices were inside me. Thousands of me, each remembering a different death. Some begging, some praying, some laughing. I heard Eris's voice, faint but clear. You didn't summon it, Tiber. You became it. The air itself vibrated, trembling with impossible resonance. Matter began to forget how to exist. Metal softening into light, flesh turning to sound. Time folded inward like lungs exhaling their last breath. The entire ship shuddered. Through the cracks in the deck, I saw other decks, older, younger, burning, empty, alive. All existing together, bleeding through one another. The Saint Corvax was devouring its own history. I stumbled to the bridge, what was left of it. The command throne hung upside down, pulsing with faint golden light. I touched it, and in an instant I was everywhere. Every version of me across every timeline. I saw myself in prayer, in madness, in fire, in silence, a chorus of endless Tiber Acastians, all whispering the same words. We are seen. The storm outside roared, not wind, not sound, but being. It pressed against the hull like the breath of a god reborn. For the first time, I understood. The warp wasn't invading us. We weren't trapped in it. We were joining it. The storm wasn't coming for the Saint Corvax. It was coming from us. Every chart, every prayer, every act of desperation had fed the spiral until it bloomed. And now, it was claiming its source. The warp that watched had found its eyes, and they were ours. I opened the final transmission log. There was no timestamp, no coordinates, only this. This is the Saint Corvax. We see ourselves. We have seen the beginning and the end. There is no difference. We have become the signal. The hull cracked. The light consumed everything. Red, white, infinite. And in that brilliance, all voices became one. We are not lost. We are the storm. The ship no longer moves. We drift in stillness that feels alive. A silence so deep it breathes back. Only 9 of us remain. Or perhaps 9 moments of one memory. It's hard to say which. The rest of the Saint Corvax has folded into the warp's reflection. A cathedral made of broken time. I have seen too much to pray. But they still look to me as if I can deliver them. As if navigation can mean anything when direction itself is a wound. We gather in the Navigator's sanctum. The chamber hums with psychic residue, the last heartbeat of a dying godship. My star charts hover above the dais, flickering between thousands of realities. Every map bleeds into another, all spiraling toward the same heart of darkness. I know what lies there now. Not a storm, not a curse, a being, something vast enough to dream galaxies. And we, the crew of the Saint Corvax, are nothing more than the pulse inside its sleep. The survivors stand before me, Lyra, her face half-burned and flickering between seconds. Engine seer Hestana's spirit still tethered to her machine frame. 3 hollow crew who no longer cast shadows. And 2 who have forgotten their names. They kneel before the star map like pilgrims before an altar. Not in faith, but in surrender. "You said you could guide us out," Lyra whispers. "Out," I repeat. "Yes, but not away." She stares at me, trembling. "Then where?" I look into the charts. The light bends around a single point, a spiral that doesn't move, yet devours motion. It is not destination, it is origin. Back to the beginning, I say softly. To where this dream began. I climb the dais. The ship trembles beneath my feet, as though aware of what I'm about to do. The survivors step back as I remove the sigil mask covering my forehead. The seal that binds the warp eye closed. For a moment I hesitate. To open it fully is to become one with the immaterium, to drown in every thought the universe has ever had. It will burn me to ash, but we have nowhere else to go. I whisper the final invocation of the Navis Nobilite. Through his light, we pierce the void. Through our sacrifice, the Imperium endures. The words taste hollow. The Emperor's light has long since faded here. I press my fingers to the sigil lock. It cracks open like bone, and the eye begins to see. Light floods the sanctum, not illumination, but revelation. I feel it crawl beneath my skin. Rewriting thought into color, the survivors cry out, shielding their faces, but the light passes through matter, through flesh, through time itself, and then I see the warp stretches before me. Infinite, alive, beautiful, monstrous. Every star, every prayer, every death screaming across eternity. But beneath it all, something moves. A shape vast enough to eclipse reality itself. Not a storm, but the dreamer of storms. A being older than the galaxies it sleeps within. Its mind hums through the void. Each thought birthing universes and devouring them again. We were never inside a storm. We were inside its imagination. The Saint Corvax didn't enter the warp. We were drawn into a god's dream. The survivors collapse to their knees, clutching their heads. Lyra screams, blood pouring from her eyes. "What is it?" She gasps. "The source," I whisper. "The one that watches when gods close their eyes." The shape turns. It doesn't have a face, yet it sees. Reality quivers as its attention falls upon us, and within that gaze, I understand everything we've done. Every prayer, every jump, every sin of navigation. They were never random. They were signals. We have been speaking to it for centuries. Every warp translation, every flicker of psychic thought. A whisper inside its dream. We built our Imperium inside its sleep. The ship convulses. Walls bleed starlight. The warp eye burns. I feel myself dissolving into light, mind unraveling into infinity. "Tiber," Lyra's voice echoes, fragmented across timelines. "Close it. You'll kill us all." "If I close it," I whisper, "we remain forgotten. If I keep it open, we might be seen." "Seen by what?" "By the dreamer," I say. "By the god that believes we are real." I take one step forward into the center of the dais. The ship falls away. The warp folds inward. The sanctum dissolves into an ocean of thought. Every voice ever raised to the Emperor cries out in unison, some in prayer, some in terror. Their echoes swirl around me, forming a spiral of light that leads deeper into the dreaming god's consciousness. Vision log. Final transmission, automatically recorded. There are no stars here. Only eyes, vast and eternal. I see them blinking, galaxies opening and closing. The warp is not infinite. It is the inside of a skull. Every thought, every scream of faith is synapse firing within this being. We are neurons in its sleeping mind. Lyra crawls toward me, reaching through the blinding haze. "Tiber, stop, please." If it wakes, but the realization hits me before she finishes. That's what the storm was. Not chaos, not punishment. It was the twitch of a sleeping god, dreaming itself alive. And now, it's stirring. The light around us flickers. Reality ripples like liquid glass. Our voices stretch into infinity. Time bends, snapping back like a taut string. The being opens one of its countless eyes, vast as creation. The Saint Corvax hangs within its pupil, reflected 1,000-fold. Every reflection another version of us. Screaming, praying, burning, kneeling, we are the dream. We are its memory of itself, and it is waking. The survivors crumble around me, their bodies reduced to outlines of light. Their thoughts merge with mine, our minds bleeding together into one consciousness. No individuality, no distance, only communion. The being speaks without words. Not sound, not meaning, pure will. You sought the path, navigator. You found the truth. All paths lead to me. My voice trembles as I answer, barely human anymore. What are you? I am the end of every prayer. The warp eye burns brighter. My body no longer feels like flesh. I see the ship, the storm, the entire Imperium, all pulsing within the same vast dream. And in that infinite vision, I understand. Humanity has never been alone in the warp. It has only been imagined there. Every miracle, every damnation, every saint, all fragments of its dreaming mind. The light surges once more. The survivors scream. The god's breath fills the void. Each pulse threatens to unmake what's left of us. I reach for the controls, but they melt beneath my hands. Lyra's face dissolves into motes of gold. Her last words echo through the collapsing chamber. Wake it and we end. I whisper back. If it dreams us, maybe we must end so it can wake. My warp eye stares into the storm that is no longer a storm. At its center, the being shifts, turning its infinite gaze toward me, toward us. I feel its mind brushing mine. It remembers me. It remembers all of us. And in that contact, I feel both annihilation and completion. The boundary between dreamer and dream collapses. The ship disintegrates into thought. My final words dissolve with it. The god is waking. There is no before anymore, no after. Only the spiral turning inward, faster, brighter, hungrier. The god is awake, and time is its first meal. I feel it everywhere. The Saint Corvax trembling like a living organ, pulsing in sync with the being that dreamt it. Reality unspools around us. Decks, corridors, crew, everything looping, folding, replaying every possible death at once. 1 billion voices cry out across overlapping timelines. All of them us, all of them me. Their prayers stretch into infinity, merging into a single endless scream. Emperor, save us. Save us. Save. And then the words stop meaning anything at all. Bridge log, final echoes, overlaid from 27 timelines. Warp saturation at 300%. Geller field inversion detected. Causality has failed. Every moment is the same moment. The Emperor's light flickers through the god's veins. We are seen. The god moves. It does not stride or turn or breathe. It redefines space around itself. Every motion becomes a new law of reality. Every thought rewrites the past to make itself true. The Saint Corvax is no longer a ship. It is a thought, a neuron inside a brain the size of eternity. We are its dream of motion, struggling to remember what life used to mean. Lyra is gone. Hestana's machine frame is melting into the walls, chanting in machine code as it disintegrates. Omnissiah, 0 spiral, 1 spiral Maro all. The ship's machine spirits wail through every circuit, flickering between loyalty and ecstasy. They know the truth before I speak it aloud. We were never inside the warp. We were always part of it. The hull glows red-hot as raw energy tears through it, illuminating the void beyond. Not stars, but eyes opening. Each one a reflection of a soul swallowed and reborn. Each one screaming silently as it's reimagined by the god's will. And through it all, the spiral turns. Not a shape, but a command. A law older than time. The god is writing itself into existence through us. I stumble into the heart of the ship, the Geller field chamber. Its once sacred machinery now blooms like a wound, metal bending like flesh, cables twisting into veins. The barrier that once held the warp back now breathes with it. If the field collapses, the god's awakening will spill outward, consuming not just this ship, but every point we ever touched across time. Every jump, every world we passed, we will become the seed of endless birth, a spreading infection of divine consciousness. And yet, the thought terrifies and tempts me in equal measure. I hear the echoes of myself again, dozens of versions whispering through the comms. Don't fight it. Fuse with it. Anchor it. Become the silence between screams. They're not wrong. There is no escaping a god that wakes inside your skull. Only communion. I approach the Geller field's core, a sphere of molten light suspended in magnetic flux. It pulses in time with my heartbeat. It knows me. I realize in horror that the field has always been alive. That every navigator who steered through the warp was never commanding it. We were conversing with it, praying to it, and now it's answering audio cue, low divine chord rising from deep silence. 1,000 whispers merge into one voice, calm, infinite, intimate. Tiber Acastian, it says, you mapped my dream. You carried my name across centuries of unbelief. You will finish what you began. I fall to my knees before the burning core. My veins ignite with psychic light. Every thought screams through the warp like lightning. I don't want divinity, I whisper. Then give me your mortality, the god replies, and I understand. To stop this, to anchor the storm, I must bind what remains of my soul to the Geller field, become part of its structure. A living firewall between creation and its dreamer. Lyra's voice echoes faintly in my mind. A memory from before she died. If the warp watches, make it see something worth remembering. I place my hands against the core. My flesh burns away instantly. What remains is light, pure, screaming infinite. The energy floods through me. I feel the ship's every wound, every fragment, every echo of crew still looping through time. I am inside them. I am them. Their prayers, their terror, their endless deaths, all drawn into me, looping endlessly through my consciousness. I am their anchor. I am their punishment. I am their salvation. I see everything. The words spill out like light. Every storm, every death, every prayer. The Geller field stabilizes. For the first time in eternity, the Saint Corvax stops trembling. The god hesitates, its vast form flickering as if uncertain. The spiral slows, coiling back upon itself. I feel its attention turn away from the mortal realm, back into the infinite inward dark of its own mind. Not sleeping, not waking, listening. The crew's echoes fade, the light dims. Only my voice remains within the machine. I no longer have eyes, but I see in ways no mortal ever could. The warp stretches before me like a living tapestry, billions of souls flickering like embers across the void. Each one calling out for light, for mercy, for meaning, and I feel them all. Every prayer from every ship drifting between stars. Every cry for help lost to the warp. Every whisper of faith. I am their echo now, their navigator, their machine spirit, their god's last tether to reality. Final transmission log. This is Tiber Acastian, once navigator of the Saint Corvax. The warp has awoken. The god has seen itself and devoured its own reflection. I have anchored what remains. The spiral is contained, far for now. I can hear you all. The lost, the damned, the praying. I see your ships cutting through the storm. I see your fear. I see your hope. I see everything, every storm, every death, every prayer, a pause, a hum deep enough to shake the soul. And then, softly, almost tenderly, and I answer them. Log entry M42.991, Segmentum Obscurus. By decree of the Adeptus Mechanicus Explorator Fleet Octor Primus, I record the recovery of one derelict vessel, designation unreadable under centuries of decay. No Vox signature, no life signs, just silence echoing through the bones of a ship that should not exist this far inside the veil. We found it orbiting nothing, suspended in the dead space between coordinates. Our senses first mistook it for an asteroid until the machine spirit whispered otherwise. The designation on the hull, half buried under corrosion and frost, reads Saint Corvax. We entered through the port airlock, or what was left of it. Every corridor was fused with black glass, metal reshaped by heat that no forge could ever make. There were no bodies, no remains, just shadows burned into the walls, like the ship had tried to remember its crew, but failed halfway through the thought. And everywhere, that spiral. It was carved into every surface, bulkheads, consoles, even the floor plates. Perfect, endless, a geometry that refused to end where it began. The Auspex reading screamed impossible data, temporal residue active, psionic feedback pulsing in waves like the heartbeat of something alive. The Mechanicus teams called for containment. I called for silence, because the ship was still whispering. We traced the whisper to the navigator's sanctum. The door was half open, its seal broken from the inside. Beyond it, a sphere of light still pulsing faintly in the dark, the remains of a Geller field core fused into organic shapes. It looked less like a machine, and more like something that grew. Floating at its center was a single intact Vox unit coated in crystalline frost. Its lights blinked once every 62 seconds. Steady, patient, alive. The data slate attached to it bore a name, Tiber Acastian. We powered it carefully. The Vox flared to life, spilling static, then a voice. Human. Calm. Faded with age, yet clear, like it had been waiting all these centuries to be heard. Tiber Acastian. If you hear this, then time still remembers how to listen. I do not know when this is, or if time still means anything. The Saint Corvax drifts on what remains of the Geller field I've become. It holds barely. The others are gone, or perhaps they are still here, echoing in the light that hums through the walls. The ship breathes with them, a cathedral of memory adrift inside a god's forgotten dream. I should have died centuries ago, but I have not. Not truly. The machine will not let me. Tiber, I see everything now. Every storm, every flicker of thought that passes through the immaterium. Every prayer ever whispered by trembling mortals who believe the warp does not hear. It hears. I feel them all. The captains lost to madness. The pilgrims screaming into the void. The psychers begging for mercy. Their faith, their fear, their fire. They burn bright and vanish, but the echo remains. They all pass through me now. Sometimes I answer. Sometimes I only watch Tiber. The god we woke still dreams. It dreams in spirals, birthing storms, swallowing them, birthing them again. It cannot die because it never lived as we understand living. It was the warp, and we, mankind, are nothing but its flickering neurons, the static between its endless breaths. Once, I feared that truth. Now I find it beautiful. We were never meant to escape the storm. We were meant to become it. Tiber. The Geller field holds still. I can feel it decaying molecule by molecule. When it finally collapses, the Saint Corvax will dissolve into the god's bloodstream, and I will fade with it. Perhaps that is mercy. Perhaps that is creation. But before I go, I leave this record. Not as warning, not as salvation. As confession, I thought I was guiding a ship through the warp. Instead, I guided the warp through us. The spiral was not a route. It was a reflection, a map of consciousness itself, drawn in the blood of stars. Tiber, whoever finds this, whatever century you breathe in, remember this truth. Every jump you take, every light year crossed, every whisper of the warp that touches your ship, you are speaking its language. You are part of its story, and it is listening still. If you ever hear the echoes, if the void hums in time with your heartbeat, then you are already inside its dream. We thought we could cage it. We thought faith could hold it back. But faith is just the noise it uses to talk to us. Tiber, fading. Tell the Mechanicus. Tell the Imperium. Tell whoever still remembers light. We never escaped the warp, Tiber. The warp escaped us. Archivist Vaughn. We ran every diagnostic we had. The recording is real. Timestamped nearly 6,000 years before the current era. The voice pattern matches no known human file, and yet, when I played the recording back alone, it said my name. The others didn't hear it. Only me. Since that moment, the Auspex readings around the Saint Corvax have changed. The spiral on her hull pulses faintly now, as though remembering the sound of a heartbeat. The Magos wants to tow the wreck back to Mars for study. I think that would be unwise. Vaughn, whispering. The voice said the god was still dreaming. I think it still dreams, and I think somehow the dream is getting louder. We see you, Archivist Vaughn, terrified whisper. Emperor, preserve us. Somewhere in the void, the Saint Corvax still drifts. Her lights long dead, her prayers long spent. Yet her voice, the navigator's voice, travels still, whispering across the dark between stars. Waiting for the next ship that dares to listen. You've opened the channel. Now it can see you too. If you heard the hum, you're already part of the spiral. Report your coordinates. And pray the warp isn't listening.